And as you close your eyes, I really want to invite you to imagine yourself in this bubble. That there's this bubble has your boundary. It is your boundary that creates a space for your energy to live in a free and liberated way. It keeps the projections of others off of you. It keeps all the noise and static of what's happening in the world out of your immediate energetic space. And it's a place where you can really breathe. And so I invite you to breathe into this space, that this is your story. This is the place of your creation. And so as you come into your body, I just want to invite you to look at your body and just have a moment inside of yourself. Come into the very center of your being. And I want to invite you to imagine yourself on a bed and you're comfortable and you're relaxed and you're in a nice, deep, luxurious dream. And all of a sudden you hear a knock that literally wakes you up quite suddenly. And this knock is asking you to wake up. And so are the dogs in the background. I don't know if you can hear them. I'm sorry if you are. They took my knock very seriously. Sorry, guys. I'm just going to call it Reggie. That knock on the door and that bark of alert is asking you to wake up to something. Wake up to a story that you're carrying that might not be yours. Wake up to a story where you might have been cast in a role that you didn't choose. It's asking you to wake up to perhaps you've fallen into the story that more is better, or that you don't have enough, or whatever story is yours. And this is your moment. This is your sacred invitation to wake up to if there's a story inside you that you don't want inhabiting this bubble, that isn't actually yours. And as if you could imagine this golden light coming down over you and coming over your body and through this body. And it's like this golden waterfall. And it's just washing off any part of the story that's not yours anymore. Suzanne said, we change the story, we change the world through how we change the stories. And maybe there's a story that you're ready to change. And right now, we're just going to allow it to be washed off for the next hour. And you see it being washed off and coming to the bottom of your bubble, it just seeps right on out your bubble. And as you breathe in, it's as if you're breathing in all the love, all the care, all the consideration you've ever received in this life. And as you breathe out, you exhale out into that bubble all your care for this world, all your love for those around you, for the times that we're living in. You're just breathing it all out. Hey guys, I have to go deal with that we have a situation. I'll be right back. I'm sorry. Sometimes life is just going to interrupt. And how do we be with the interruptions? It's as much about the interruption itself. There's this great quote by Martin Shaw that I just love. And it says, the business of stories is not enchantment. The business of stories is not escape. The business of stories is waking up. I invite you to open your eyes and put into the chat what you discovered in your meditation and among all that barking. My sincere apologies.
Are you in?
What's that? So what are we seeing here? We're seeing that Christina's saying, I discovered that I have things to let go of about my pain around my self-perception. That's a great one. Holly's saying, I love the quote. It's about the business of waking up. I was hearing enoughness as the story. Yeah. Are there any other stories that want to clear out of our space? Suzanne saying, just thinking that it's going from having the most to giving the most, that would be what changes the world. Having them, okay, from changing from having the most to giving the most. Oh, wow, that's a whole different story, right? What makes one valuable is how much is what you have to give. Yeah. Yeah. Wow. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Always having to let go of the stories I tell myself because of others. Right. Right. So we're going to dive into this world of sacred storytelling, and the place where we're going to start is the oldest place. It's my favorite place to begin, and it's with the elders. But first, I'll tell you a little bit about my story and what we're getting ourselves into. And I'm going to share my screen so that you can see what we're up to. And pardon me, I'm just going to have to do a little moving things around. Okay. So this is really looking at what is story as a sacred healing art, and what is it as looking at as an ancient heart art form. And there's this other quote that I love to start with, which is, we think we tell stories, but stories often tell us. They tell us to love or to hate, to see or be seen. And often, too often, stories will saddle us, they'll ride us, they'll whip us onward, they'll tell us what to do, and we'll do it without questioning. I actually hate this quote for this one thing, and it's the use of the language of we. There's no we. I don't mean to sound, I know we're all the same, blah, 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 but actually we all, like if we all looked around the room, we all come from different places, different backgrounds, different perspectives. We see the world and experience the world in different ways. So I'm not going to assume that this is your story, but it might be. It might be. The task of learning to be free requires learning to hear those stories, learning to question them, to pause and to hear silence, to name them, and then become a storyteller. So what we're going to do, and the reason why I love that quote is it really speaks about the process and the responsibility of storytelling, that we don't just use it all willy-nilly, that just because you open your mouth and you have a story to tell, that doesn't make you a sacred storyteller. And so today we're going to make that distinction between what is it to tell a story with intention? What is it to know who you are as a conscious creator? What is it to know the responsibility of your language? And what is it to work with story as a tool for change for the better? So this is what we're up for today. In terms of who am I? I come to this about as honestly as I can. That's hilarious that these things are not ever here before. Okay, sorry. I grew up on a farm in Vermont, and I didn't realize how important being in nature and loving nature was such a part of my of who I am as a storyteller and becoming a storyteller until I actually got to see Martin Shaw. Martin Shaw is a modern day bard from England, and it was seeing him hold a story in the old way that connected all the dots of connection to land, connection to story, connection to self. That these three things, it's that trifecta that creates a storyteller. I learned the responsibility of storytelling in a pretty rough way. I was 16 when my best friend committed suicide, and I was beside myself. Isn't that an amazing expression? You ever heard that? It's beside yourself. And you're literally saying you're not inside your body, you're not inhabiting. Something has kicked you outside of yourself. And I didn't know how to process that grief. And until then, story had always been my sanctuary. It had been my safe place. It had been my escape. And so I went there to escape the pain that I was feeling. But more than that, I went there to make sense and meaning of something that you can't make sense of. And I ended up writing my first play. That play won a part in a spot in a storytelling festival. I got to see it on the stage. And what I learned is that what you put out into the world comes back. That as I shared my grief, it wasn't like it just went out there and I walked a walk away. No, I was then there as other people came and their grief was evoked and they came to me to share theirs also. So I learned the responsibility of storytelling. I learned the business of storytelling very young. I went straight out of high school in New York City to study with Sandy Meisner at Williamstown Theater Festival. I was in a professional theater company all through high school. I worked off Broadway. I worked in summer stock. And I learned very young that I had no interest in the business of theater. Mostly for two reasons, to be totally frank. One, I didn't want to spend my life speaking other people's words. I didn't want to spend my life inhabiting other people's reality, especially when it was so limited at that time. Well, and I also didn't want to be in a world that was filled with that much rejection, where like my capacity to do what I wanted was based on like other people's perception of me, right? I was like, who wants to live in that world? So I decided I'd rather be authoring my life story than waiting to be cast in the role of someone else. I ended up working as I went to college. I ended up studying experiential education and environmental education through performance. And I went on to get a master's in social work. I worked for 7 years as a wilderness guide. And it was those 7 years working in the wilderness where I really began to learn about the deepest form of listening, and that the land has so much to share, and that there's so much that can happen in the spaciousness when we have that time. And that's really when the earth began to have an active role in my life and play an active role in my own story. I ended up working for Al Gore at his television network, at Current TV, and I was there with a simple mission. I wanted to influence change in the world, and I thought that if we told environmental stories that had an international impact, that we could change the world. And what I saw was that good people with good intentions can cause great harm if they don't understand what a story is and how it impacts our consciousness. I also saw a couple other things, that people aren't paying attention to information. They don't pay attention to facts. What they are enthralled with are stories. And getting to see that, I got to see the data. It was like my ticket, my golden ticket into how the genius wanted to live through me. And I was always a devotee to writing, to storytelling. And I started to go into that deep listening for the stories that want to come through this time. Joseph Campbell said, listen for the stories. There will always be new stories that want to come through this time. And I started catching the myths of this time. And I started discovering that some of us are story catchers, and some of us are myth carriers, and some of us are story midwives. And I started to learn that in this space of being with story, that something was happening in that space, that there was an energy that was being created. And I was watching people have these radically, almost unexplainable, healing, dare I say, transformational experiences in this, when we took a story and we placed it into the energy of a ceremony, and we made use of all the energy that we're building. And that was one of my questions that I've walked with. It was like, how do we use that energy that we are creating together as both storyteller and story catcher? What's really happening when we're doing this? And so that's what I'm here to talk to you about. I always was driven by that big question, how does change happen? You know, Suzanne stole all my thunder, which I love. Change happens in the way that we tell our stories, and how do we carry the stories? Sorry, guys, I have a very upset dogs. I think there are coyotes that are running through. And so if you're hearing all this noise, it's because you're not. I'm so glad you're missing all the fun. The Hawaiians say that words are so powerful that they can raise enough energy to slow the world or to set it into motion. The Sicilians say that words poke holes in the universe. I always think about that when I get a little angry. That what you say can't ever be taken back. Except now, actually, in text, they have the unsend button. So sometimes you can if someone doesn't see it. But it's a good message. Australians say that the stories of the past must be sung to the present so the future can exist. Maori say that words don't describe a thing, they are the thing. In Japanese, there's a word called kotodama. It speaks to the word spirit, and it refers to the original spirit of a word before it enters a world of thought waves. So what they're saying is that words are alive and they have power. And they have power to create. Abracadabra, it's a word from ancient Aramaic mysticism. I create as I speak. And all the ancient religions agree that the world was sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. Can we I just want to invite you to like pause and take that in. I'm from the East Coast, and we're inherently kind of critical. We just can't help it. We're just critical and critique everything. It's kind of like a sport. I don't know if anyone else here is from the East Coast. I say this very affectionately, the Northeast Coast in particular. And so this idea of like half glass full, I was just like, what a bunch of bull honky, woo-woo California stuff. Well, now I live in LA. But that's besides the point. The point to me is that this is ancient. This is old. This is not new age. This is old age, some of the oldest wisdom that we have on the planet. And it's one of the things that all cultures and religions agree and understand how our world is coming into being. That the world is sung, spoken, and chanted into existence. They didn't say that the world is texted into existence or emailed into existence, that it's spoken. And so really, what a time to be alive when we're seeing so much change in the world, and when we're seeing this emergence with AI, and when the relationship between being a human being and being a human doing are really at odds with each other. And I would say that the space of being a storied person, a well-storied person, and knowing your role in the world as a storyteller, as a creator, is the key to us keeping our humanity. I read this magic words. In the very earliest time when both people and animals lived on Earth, a person could both be an animal if he wanted, or a person could be an animal if he wanted, or an animal could be a human being. Sometimes they were people and sometimes animals, and there was no difference. All spoke the same language. That was a time when words were like magic. The human mind had mysterious powers. A word spoken by chance might have strange consequences. It would suddenly come alive, and what people wanted to happen could happen. All you had to do was say it. Nobody could explain this. That's just the way it was.
The mouse good.
That's translated from the Inuit, from Edward Field. So I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask you to put it into the chat box if you can, if you don't mind. And it's what does a story do? What is it? What is a story? If you could put that in the chat box, I'm going to grab my plug and I'm going to be right back. And we're going to get into what is a story? What is a story and what does it do? Thank you for that slight pause. Okay, what have we got going? And if you can come on, it's so nice to see your faces. And this is the part that's interactive and we get to have a conversation. So here's what's going on. Oh my gosh, I love how much is going on over here. So a creation story tells us what we are and what we are doing here, says Suzanne, right? And she mentioned a creation story. These are the origin stories. These are the oldest stories on earth. One of my favorite quotes is from Sean Kane. He says that the myths, or these creation myths, are the earth speaking out loud. They're like the operating manuals for how to be here on the planet and how it all works. They teach us how to live in a good way. Welcome, Krista. Holly says, for me, a story is a spell that makes a dream come true. Oh, wow. That is gorgeous, Holly. I just love that. A spell that makes a dream come true, right? Spells, spelling, it's all connected, right? Krista, a neural treasure map. You guys are so fun. A neural treasure map to help people massage their mirror synapses. Oh gosh, you're getting the science ahead of me. And feel they have company and someone knows what's going on. Okay, Krista. Krista, where are you? Looking for here. Someone knows the science of storytelling. Yes, I love it. I love it. So she's getting into the neural coupling. I'm gonna play right here since we're right here with it, which is let's go on a little journey. Once upon a time, not so long ago, and not so far away, down at the bottom of the ocean walked the most beautiful woman on earth. Her hair flowed in the current of the water. Every step she took left an imprint of a footprint with stars that sparkled and went up to the surface. Okay, who was able to see that image? Woman walking at the bottom of the ocean. Yeah, okay. So here's what happened. We location traveled, we reality bended, and I did something very specific. I didn't define what the most beautiful woman on the world looks like. I would love to hear what you all saw. What did you get to see? So that was a moment of consciously not planting the idea of what beauty looks like, but actually creating space in your own mind for it. But something else was happened. We all went on that journey together. And as we went there together, we reality bended, location traveled, made up something that I've never known or seen before. Part of my brain was getting super activated, the frontal right lobe, deep, 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 And as those images were coming into your mind, without the use of Zoom, just the use of my voice, the frontal lobe of your brain started to get super active, deep, 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 and we co-created a reality together. So when we think about who's holding the power in the storytelling experience, the illusion is that it's the storyteller. The true person of power is the person who's catching it, who's receiving it, who's allowing it to live inside them or not. So may you know always that your capacity to do that. And so what I was calling magical, that we have this experience in storytelling, Princeton calls neural coupling. Okay, nobody told me what their beautiful woman looks like. That's okay. Where are we? But I had lots of stories. Lisa's saying that a story teaches, reveals, and entertains. It helps you connect to archetypes to understand yourself better, right? And what is this archetype that she's speaking of? This archetype, it's a universal structure that can live through all of us. And we'll go through different archetypes throughout our lives, right? And this is how our stories can become universal. John Steinbeck says, the story must be about the reader or it will not last. You can say the same thing about telling. The story has to be about them. By the time you come to the threshold of being a storyteller, you understand that your story is part of a human experience, and that we're always seeing ourselves in other people's stories, and that we can give great medicine that way. Usman is saying a structured form of communication. Right, it is. There's a beginning, middle, and end, and a story is going to take you somewhere. It's going to take you on a journey. I love the teaching of John Young. It can be a very short story, don't leave the fire or a lion's going to kill you. Story, right? It's a narrative more, but it's enough, to understand there's a teaching story in there. So another way of looking at a story is that it's an operating system. It's an operating system that teaches our beliefs, our values, and what we believe is possible. It does something else though. I was walking through, I live in Topanga Canyon, and this area is very alive and evocative, and it's filled with owls and skunks that skunked the dogs last night, and coyotes, and we're just like on the edge of LA, and it's all wild here. In this place, it talks out loud. And a lot of what I bring to you, I study with plenty of people, but also a lot of my deep, true understanding of what it is to be a storyteller comes from walking this canyon. I was walking through the canyon, and I swear to you, that canyon, she said, you got to stop telling people that story is an operating system. And I was like, why? It's quick. It makes sense. We only have an hour. And he says, but you should just tell them the truth. And I was like, okay, Canyon, what you got for me? What's a story that's the truth? And it said, a story. It's a library of the soul. And I was like, yeah, that is what a story is. It is a library of the soul. The story is, it's not the facts and information. It's Landing and Krista, It's like, that's why it's so fun when you're on video. It's a two-way conversation, it's our stories are not like, they're not linear. And the story is not the facts and information. It's about how we make meaning and how we are changed by our stories. That's what our stories have the potential of being. And when Nancy comes and she shares the wisdom of her life, and she's lived a couple of years, I can see. Right, she's got some stories to tell, right? And when she shares, the parts where she thrived and how she learned to thrive, and when she shares the pitfalls and how she learned how to get out of them, it's like we get to have this evolutionary experience. Because when you and I come to that same pothole, I'm trying to say a pothole, but I'm saying, a pothole in the road, and someone that's already been before us tells us about it, and they've been through it, and they know how to avoid it, or they've got some good guidance on how to get through it. You don't have to have that same experience. It's like you get to leapfrog in this evolutionary experience, and you've got time to go learn the next lesson, because I think we're all here learning lots of stuff. So, oh, hi, Stephen. So Okay, that's fine. That's a story. What's a sacred story? What makes a story sacred? What are we talking about when we're talking about sacred stories? It sounds so fluffy. By the way, one of my thrills and delights is that one of my friends and mentors has worked in Hollywood for many, many years. He's like, yeah, I didn't know what a sacred story was until I started like hearing what you were all talking about. And it's really just this old thing that's among us. And we're reclaiming it and giving it a way to live strongly among us as we remember what it is. And so sacred story enlightens us, says Lisa. Right? It brings us, it's like it brings something to the table. It doesn't leave you in the darkness. She literally says it enlightens us. And I want to talk about that. It doesn't leave you in the darkness and it doesn't leave you in the bowels, right? And so storytellers, you know, we have the role of being a guide. We'll talk a little bit more about this later. It's a really extraordinary role to get to have, to be a guide through life. And when you're a storyteller, you're guiding people through their consciousness. And so you can take people to the darkest parts. You can show them the warning stories about how horrible humanity has been in the past as you guide them to show them what we have been so that we remember so we don't have to repeat it again. But whenever, even if you take people to the bowels of hell, you always bring them back. So those stories, when you're done, you're feeling more alive, more hopeful. You've got something to carry with you. Right. Krista says love wins in a sacred story. Anyone else? Is anyone else just tripping out that all the Marvel stories are all about they're getting bigger and more, and it's about the good against evil, and ultimately good always wins. You know, and it's a very powerful story that's in us right now, that there can be a great battle, but love will always win. Sacred, Stephen's saying the sacred connects to the self, to each other, to earth, and to the whole. Right? That's great. You know, you just spelled it out that when we're standing as a sacred storyteller, here's our vessel. This is our vehicle for the story, for the soul. We got to, this is the tool, the instrument, you know, this body, this voice. And when we're really in it, we're in the state of connection. You know, when I first studied theater, you know, you learn all these tools about being present. That's the first thing you learn about being present. They call it follow every impulse. In other words, your instincts. You know, what I didn't learn while going through theater, when I went on to go, you know, start studying about being spiritual, I was like, wait a second, this is all the same thing. And then I learned that in ancient Greece, everyone, this was a must. Everyone in ancient Greece had to go through theater school. Also, everyone went to the theater. It didn't matter how much money you had or not. There was always a seat for you in the theater. It was patroned. So, you know, now we train everyone to go to war. Before they trained everyone to go through theater because they understood how powerful it was and how much it taught us. Suzanne is saying a sacred story identifies all of us. That's interesting. I don't know exactly what you mean, but I'm going to go off of it, leapfrog off of it, and say that in times when um, they used to say that you know uh, the traveler would travel, the storyteller would go from village to village, and he would bring the stories of what was happening and carry. You know, he was the news keeper of the day, and that if there was a child in the TP that was misbehaving, they didn't scold him. They did something considered much worse. They ignored him or her. And to be ignored by the storyteller was considered like the worst kind of pain. And I think about that in our modern day storytelling, you know, because our modern day storyteller for most people is Hollywood, right? And who are they showing on the screen? And who are they not showing on the screen? And what does it feel like to not see yourself represented in the stories of our time? And this obviously, like in the last decade, has radically changed. But it's something that is definitely shifting and changing. Suzanne, yes, it could save people a lot of psychotherapy. Okay. So, we're onto something, right? We're saying that sacred storytelling, it's not just any old story. It's a story. What do we say when we're saying that it's sacred? We're saying that we see the life inside of it, and we're saying that it has a purpose. It's doing something. It's serving life. It's a story that comes in service to life. So one of the things I love about being a sacred storyteller is that it makes some things very simple right now. When we're in this very strange time where we're not all have the same news and information, when we're not all seeing the same news and information, and you can really look at something about, do I want to let this seed plant in my consciousness? And you can ask this very simple question. Is this story in service to life? Or is this story disruptive and pulling us apart? And if you have a story that's a disruptor, that's planting the seeds of hate, planting the seeds of separation, then as a sacred storyteller, your little hairs start tingling, you get a little wily, and you start really paying attention, and you want to go to the source of that story, and you want to know who's telling it and what they're in service to, before you just grab any old thing and just let it sink on in. An example of a zombie story, as I call them, the zombie stories, you kind of want to get a little after watching them. Feel a little hopeless about them. Not much living for, you know, how it goes. Jaws, written by Peter Benchley, brought to life by Steven Spielberg. What were they in service to? Peter Benchley just heard a random story about a great white shark and was really curious and just wrote a story about it. Steven Spielberg wanted to become a very famous director and was looking for something where he would get recognized. They shot it on the open ocean, the very first film to ever be shot on the open ocean. And what do we know about stories is that they speak their own language. They have their own lexicon. Language speaks the universal language of symbols, archetypes, metaphor. Metaphor, they say, is the language of spirit. So spirit can speak to us through stories, through metaphor. And so, whether or not you speak the language of story, the language of story speaks you. It's in us. We're storied people. What does the ocean represent? Consciousness. Represents our consciousness. What happened to that on that film set? Well, their big, great shark prop broke. They were smart. They had to keep going, so they just showed like a little piece of it, right? They realized that we didn't have to see the whole thing, just a little piece of it. What happened? The symbol of shark got planted in our consciousness as representation of our fear of death, and that went across the world. Fun facts, more people die every year from coconuts falling out of trees than sharks. When Peter Benchley realized what he had done, he spent the rest of his life being an ocean protector. So I say this as a warning tale, because I don't think that there's bad people out there trying to tell harmful stories. I think that we are just coming back to understanding how powerful we are and being told that we aren't, that our voice actually really does matter. That, as Suzanne says, we really can change the world as we change our stories. So may you be good tenders of the garden of your consciousness. So I think of having sacred storytelling goggles. You can watch them go by. You don't have to be afraid of them. It's not like, don't be like, don't harsh my mellow or tell me something that's sad or depressing. You're lowering my vibe. I'm not saying that. That's not what I'm going for. I'm going for, you have that bubble, that beautiful bubble from our thing where you fill your energy frequency with your consciousness, with the gift that you're giving. And the only thing that you allow in are those things that come in the nature of love and the service of life and that are refueling you. And that, if there's anything that you get out of this class, I hope that's it. Okay. Oh my gosh, we're nearly at the end of our time together. Stephen, oh, he's walking through the forest yesterday and had this insight. The three sisters, the senses, our connection to time, spirit, our connection to energy, soul, our connection to matter, are held together by the metaphysical gravity of story, our connection to love. I find these three sisters embodied as Sister Earth, Sister Moon, and that's great. I love this. Um, you know, one of the things that we do in our classes, and you're just bringing this up, Stephen, but I'll mention this because you brought us here. This is why I love when people bring things, because you guys feed and nourish our conversation. One of the first things we do is we go through an exercise of learning what are we in service to. And we all have our different medicine, we all have a different gift to bring. What are you in service to? And when you know that, it's sort of like those stories. It's like you're putting up your antenna. David Bowie says, I just put up my antenna and it comes through, right? That was his saying of what it was like for him as a creative, you know? So it's like you're kind of putting up your antenna, you know, if you're in connection and devotion to connection, if you're in connection to belonging, if you're in connection to love, you know, or community, those stories, you don't have to say the words. They're going to be threaded into the resonance of every word that you speak in your story. You know, I'm a total devotee to love and unity. And I fall in love with everyone that I talk story with. It's almost impossible not to. Because we're in this field of, it's a regenerative field of giving and receiving. You know, what does the storyteller do? They're giving. Right? They're giving what they're in service to. They're giving the nature of life. They're really giving our life force energy. And what is the story catcher doing? But they're receiving. They're creating a space. They're holding the energetic field. They're literally receiving that piece. And their presence gives back. And the storyteller receives it. And now they're absolutely connected to the field and the consciousness of the people who are listening. That's why the number one job of a storyteller is to be a profound listener and to create a place for people's to rest their energy enough so that we can come into that place of true cohesion. People don't understand that that's actually the number one job that storytellers actually have to do. This is more of a skills thing that I don't get into, but it's one of the things that we teach about in our class. How do you create spaces where your stories can be caught so that you get to relax in the pleasure of allowing the story to flow through you? If you're not, people are all fidgety and they're doing this and they're up there and blah blah blah, then you have to work a lot harder. You guys are taking me onto all different kinds of things I don't normally talk about. Oh gosh, you know, I've always wanted to read this book. I have it on my shelf. The best story that will change the world is Brian Swims' The Universe is a Green Dragon. Thank you for offering that. So we are coming around the bend. We're coming around the bend. Let me see. I'm just going to pick up our thing and see if there's anything else that what we want to talk about. I'll tell you a little bit about this. What is a storyteller? I'm going to leave you with this kind of thought. In Japan, they're considered the person of the falling word. I love that. In Welsh, they're the recounter, the guide. In Africa, they call the griot's role was to preserve the genealogy and the oral traditions. In Celtic traditions, the bard was a professional storyteller, verse maker, music composer, oral historian, genealogist, and they were also employed by a patron, and they had to commemorate the patron's ancestors and to praise the patron's own activities. So be careful of romanticizing being a bard, because what did a bard do? They had to sing for their supper. This is one of my favorite ones. Ben Okri says this. In ancient Africa and Celtic land, storytellers were magicians. They were initiates. They understood the underlying nature of reality, its hidden forces. The old Celtic bards could bring out welts on the body with a string of syllables. They could heal sickness with a tale. They could breathe life into a dying civilization with the magic of a story. To a thriving civilization, they could bring transformation with the potency of a myth. So by now, I think that we're on the same page that storytelling is not a frivolous act. It's not a luxury. It's happening every day to us and through us. I'm going to end with a little story. And then for those who want to learn more about the School for Sacred Storytelling and learn more about a course that's coming up called Essence, I'll stay and I'll introduce you to the School for Sacred Storytelling. But first, this story. I start every story with a little invocation. Shouldn't call it little. When I first started, I watched a lot of the old storytellers, and they would use drums, and they would do this whole thing, and they would invoke the story, and I was like, I'm sorry, I was like, I'm a Jewish girl. I'm not going to go learn drumming just because that's what the dudes do, and the spirits were like, well, yeah, but you sing. So sing your invocation. And so as I was learning, I also learned these simple words, and I offer them to you, and I call them the storyteller's prayer. And it's, may all the words that need to be heard be spoken. That prayer is for you. That is whatever is alive in your tender heart. May this be a place where it can be spoken to. May all the words that need to be heard be spoken. May all the words that need to be spoken be heard. And that prayer is to honor the muse. That whatever is alive and asking to be spoken, that may it land on ears and hearts that can receive it. Ahio, ahio, ahio. Ahio, ahio, ahio. Ahio, ahio, ahio. This story was given to me as a gift. The woman who gave it to me, her name, I cannot remember. I've searched high and low. But what she told me was, I'm giving you this story. I'm giving you a gift. And I had no idea that something could be given and I could keep it. This story was about her grandmother who lived in the Holocaust. And on this day, she was in a place with just 6 other women. And they were in a room that they were locked in, and they were starving. And she was beginning to see that the hunger was going really deep. And she was seeing that they were losing their will, and that she just had to do something. She had to feed these women. She took the one last thing of material value that she had, which was her wedding ring that had been sewn into her coat. And she went to the guard and she offered it to him in exchange for 6 eggs, one for each of them. He took her ring, but when he came back, there were only 5 eggs. She looked at the 5 eggs. She looked at the 6 of them. How could she decide? Who wasn't going to get as much as the other? It seemed impossible. She almost wanted to throw them away. And then she realized she had something else to give them. She cracked those eggs. She separated the yolks from the white parts. And that day, they gave each other facials. She gave them their humanity back. Hi, 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 oh. Hi, 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 oh. Hi, 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 oh. Hi, 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 oh. I invite you to place in the chat box what you received from that story, because we'll all receive different things. And if it feels like a gift that you want to call on, I love this story. I love this story because for me, it teaches me that there's always that there's a deeper hunger that's there. That sometimes what's sitting on the surface isn't the most obvious thing. That even when there seems like there's no way out, that there's something else. There's another opportunity, right? And she lived to tell the tale. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, so I'm going to end you with one more quote. This is from one of my favorite teachers, Stephen Jenkinson. And it goes like this. Act as if you are people of consequence so that I can treat you as such and that you matter. What must have happened to people who unconsciously agreed that the best presence in this world is to have no consequence in this world? It's a velvet gauntlet, this idea of being of consequence. It doesn't clink when it hits the ground, but you can feel it. It would be proper to proceed that there is consequence to us being here. That is by Stephen Jenkinson. I'm seeing all the beautiful things that you're saying. Compassion for love. Okay, so that is our story for today. That is our class for today. I hope that you received something, a nugget or two, to carry into your life. And welcome to the world of the Sacred School of Sacred Storytelling. We have quite a few ways that you can play with us. So hi, Claire. And if you're interested in learning more, I'm going to stay on now for a little bit longer. And I'm going to walk you through a program that we both have and also tell you about our monthly membership. And our monthly membership is pretty darn fun. So that's what we got. That's okay, Nancy. I totally understand. You know, it's Sunday for heaven's sakes. Okay. So, gosh, where do we begin? I think I'm going to start right here. I'm going to ask you just a really simple question. And the question is, it's so simple, it's almost, obvious, which is, what do you want to grow? What's trying to emerge through you? And is it understanding the mechanics of story? Just like some real tools and techniques? Are you wanting to be a facilitator of change no matter where you are in your life or in your work, your job, your friends, your family? Are you here do you want to learn how to create healing environments where people can receive your stories? Are you really wanting to attune to how you use your voice and really strengthening it and being able to follow your intuition and speak up when you have something to say in a way that it can be heard? One of the things I know is that your stories, they're like trees, and they are designed to grow and evolve. There's nothing that tells me that someone's a little stuck if they keep telling the story of their childhood over and over. We want to allow it to be that was what the story was about. We've been changed by it, and we're over here. We can tell our stories differently. This is actually a little bit old now. We have so many more. This is an old thing, actually. You're about to see how many more people we've been serving, which is really my delight. But what are we doing here? It's the alchemy of story. And what happens when we talk story is that we generate more love. We generate connection. We enter onto the path of eldership. This to me is a great honor. It doesn't mean that you're old. There's plenty of elders that don't have eldership, and I know plenty of youngers who are more committed to be eldering the future generations. It creates belonging. It can create healing, and it creates bridges between different worlds. It's one of the most powerful tools that we have, and you don't have to buy it. It's your God-given or universe-given gift. In terms of what we offer as the school, we offer live courses. We offer a monthly membership. We also offer private coaching. So if you're at a moment of threshold and change and you're really wanting some support, you can get that here. I'm actually going to change this now, and I'm going to show you our brand spanking new, not even out in the world website. And this is kind of an exciting thing to share. Can you see it? I want to make sure that you're seeing the screen. Okay, you are. Great. So this is our new world. It's a whole new planet that you can see over here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to bring you into the realm of the alchemy of story. We haven't been able to launch the site because it's a work of art, I tell you. It's just taking a little bit longer than we thought. The alchemy of story. So what this program is looking at is it's really looking at an alchemy between 3 different weaves of thread. One of them is, real just technical skills, how to be a better storyteller. One is understanding the healing properties of stories. And then one is actually being exposed to Indigenous storytellers. And through it all, we're looking at how do you alchemize your life experience so that you can be someone who is a tool, really working with story as a tool for change. And I'm going to give you, let's see if this is going to work. Oh, nope. It didn't. I'm sorry about that. I am going to give you a link right now so that you can book your discovery call. And what I really want to encourage you to do is that if you think that this is for you, like if you actually are like, yeah, this is something I'm curious about, I really do want to encourage you to do that. And so I'm just going to grab this link real fast. So I'm sorry not to have that right here, but it actually makes all the difference. And the reason why I'm saying, if you think that this is for you and you want to do this, then the way that you can email is just so darn hard. It's so easy for things to get lost, is what we've discovered. And so when you register, and if you register this weekend, you get like instant bonus classes. It's like instant gratification. You get access to our VIP, our summit, our Master Teachers Library. It's kind of a pretty awesome thing that you get. So let me put this back into the realm of share so that you can see what we're cooking up. So what makes this program unique is what I just mentioned. It's that you're going to get access to Indigenous teachers. You're going to have teachers that will really work with you on how to work with the power of story as a healing modality. And then you're also going to learn technical storytelling skills. So it's really a program that's unlike anything else that you'll ever see. It's taught through 5 different modules, and it is something that is really designed to take you on a journey. And the journey begins with really getting to the essence of you and the essence of the story of your soul. But before we can do that, we've got to go back. We've got to go back to the beginning. And so we go to the roots of your stories, and we'll learn how your lineage stories, and we'll also learn the stories of your land, those origin creation stories. So you're going to get instantaneously this, well, not instantaneously, there's nothing instant about storytelling, but you'll start off with this really strong foundation of what it is to stand on those old stories, what's holding you up. We're going to make those visible. And then you're going to enter into the mythic imagination as you learn how to catch the stories from your land and how to tell the story of your soul. So this is a very unique, special, different kind of class. You're not telling your whole life story of your human experience. We're going to get to play with your essence story, your archetype, your mythology, your mythos. Then we go into wisdom stories. And this is where you get to look at the different times where life has taught you a thing or two and you've got something to share. These will often look like times that we've been initiated by life, where there's been some challenge, maybe some suffering. and we might not have it be fully processed yet, but these are the stories where we can really get to our personal power. It's where we get to mine for the gems, and it's so fun. The end of every class, you get to have we do a little mini storytelling festival as our last class. And this is an opportunity for everyone will tell their story to an audience. You can invite your own community. It's a super fun thing to do. Our next journey is going into the realm of medicine stories. And this is really looking at your story as healing and yourself as a healer as you tell stories. You'll learn how to tell two different kinds of stories. One is how to learn about narrative medicine. And you'll see that our guest teachers here, we have Lewis, who's a master of narrative medicine. We also have Joshua, who's the host of the Emerald podcast. Sorry, I haven't been pointing out all of our teachers. They're so incredible. And Jacqueline, who is will really teach you about the history of actually folk tales, and not realize that so many of us don't realize how much of an impact they have on our everyday life. And so when you're looking at this, you'll learn how to tell two different kinds of stories. One, how like story can be used as medicine for others and through narrative medicine, but also how can you work and engage and call a story from medicine and healing for yourself. Then we're looking at stories as change, and who are we as change makers and how we tell our stories. You'll learn how to tell vision stories, and you'll learn how to tell teaching stories. And you'll also get to learn how to work with story to protect something that you care deeply about. So you'll have an opportunity to use words, creativity, poems, song, anything you want to speak out about the things you love about. Then we have ceremony. And ceremony is so unexplainable. This is the most magical class, and it really looks at you as a storyteller and the energy in that space that you are generating and creating. It'll teach you how to protect your energy, how to manage fields of energy, how to facilitate that space, and how that life is a ceremony and our stories are part of that, and how to really alchemize the entire experience. So that is the course. You'll see that I'm so honored. We've had an incredible amount of people that have come through these doors. And one of the things that I hear most about is that people talk about the community. They meet amazing people that they stay in touch with. And one of the things that I'm proud of is that we have people from a lot of different perspectives coming into this space, and yet we're talking stories about our heart. So there are those who shape the world we live in, and there are those who live in a world shaped by others. Suzanne, our page isn't actually live, and what you're seeing is our designer having put in our old guest teachers, and that he's not actually a current teacher in this year's school. Just to see what you get in a glance. There's 5 creative modules that are 6 weeks long. You'll be exposed to 16 different guest teachers who will teach you different tools and techniques. You're going to leave with a big basket filled with a lot of gifts. It's over 90 hours of live interactive class time. And that means that that's you doing, being, sharing, being witnessed, getting feedback, being in groups. It's a pretty awesome thing. All those classes are going to be, you also get access to our master teacher library. So it's like all the years before where people came in as guest teachers, you get those classes too. So it's a living library, and it's an incredibly powerful foundation. And I love this, our designer Rahul put this in, 222 new ideas generated every hour. So lots of sparks of inspiration. The things that you will really experience is you'll never see me talking this much in a class. They're very interactive. You will be constantly getting creative prompts. You're going to learn different exercises, different meditations, different ways in to spark your creativity. One of the things I'm very committed to is making sure that people have a place to exercise and create and develop their own voice. It's not about mimicking my process or my style. It's really about developing your own. And I love finding people the way into their own. So we'll work for you and make sure that you get access to your way. You get lifetime access to all the classes, videos, and materials. You get your own group of greatness, This is a group that you can, if you want to, meet outside of class. And then it's you on stage. At the end of every course, which is 6 weeks, we'll have a little mini storytelling festival. And you get to share your story with the whole community, and also you can invite your own community. You know this person, and that is the course. Are there any questions that you have right now? You guys are all looking at something. I don't know what you're looking at. Okay. Well, that was our class today. This is the course. Essence, the very first course, starts on the 24th. We're beginning with some extraordinary teachers. Amy is coming to us from the Cherokee Nation, and she is bringing us she's been hunting down all the stories that were almost lost and recovering them. Kim will be coming in as a guest teacher. She tours, she's literally on tour right now around the country as a professional storyteller, and she's going to be teaching, thank you, Marilyn, hardcore storytelling skills. And then we have one more person that's going to be a little secret that I can't quite tell you yet, who's going to be coming in and to really work with you on working with story as a healing modality and focusing on connection with the ancestors, connecting with the land. So it's a grand group that's coming together. What I'll say is that you have two different options of engaging. One of them is just one module, and then obviously the program, and then we have a certification program. And that certification program is designed for people who want to, the program is saying, I want to use this program for me. The certification program says, I want to use this to help other people. And so in that program, we meet one extra time each month. You get a practicum. You also get to do your own mini TED Talk. And you get a lot of support in terms of becoming a facilitator of working with story. You'll facilitate in our monthly group and membership and things like that. And for those of you who say, that's great, but I'm not quite into that much of a commitment, which, or whatever your piece is, we also have this thing called the Full Moon Circle. And this is... Welcome to the Lunatics monthly membership. It just starts talking before I want to. But this is our monthly membership. And this is a way to stay in connection. Maybe you don't want the whole class and all the teachers, and maybe you don't really want to get in the practice of telling your story out loud, but you want a place just to keep your creative spark going. We have a creative jam every Thursday where you get a creative prompt and you can create. We meet on the new moon. I do a soul story. It's a place to come set your intentions and be in a story ceremony with other women and men. We do have men in there, not many, but they're there. And then we also have a full moon story where we work on our vision stories and how do we be visionaries in that way. And then, why are we lunatics? Because we're working with the rhythm of the land. We're reclaiming that connection. And so lunatic was not always a bad association. It was just meant someone connected to the rhythms of the land. So, okay, now I am done. Now you know all the goods. I'll follow up with an email. And if you think that this course is for you, I definitely suggest scheduling an information session. And away we go. You can take yourselves off mute and say adieu. Bye.
Thank you.
David, I'm so impressed that you stayed around for that whole spiel.
Thank you.
You're already in the sanctuary.
I am, I know. I'm just like seeing if I miss anything.
You're welcome. You're welcome. You're welcome.
Great, Leah. Wonderful. Thank you so much for all you're doing. Love it. Absolutely.
Wonderful. 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 Have a lovely day. Have a lovely Sunday. Bye.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.